I'm always interested in how much is left out of these 5-minute conversations. And the concept of all the wind power off the East Coast suddenly being available is an interesting one. And I asked the mayor of New Haven years ago where the transmission was that would manage all of that wind power that was at one point planned. Have you studied that? Because the answer is there isn't transmission available for that wind power. And that would appear to be the case also in my state of Oregon, where there were literally hundreds of megawatts, if not gigawatts, of solar planned and on the drawing board, but there's no way to get it to where it was going to be used.
Yeah.
And so it gets us back to the incredible frailty of our grid. But I'm just curious about the eastern seaboard for just a moment. What kind of shape is that grid in?
I think you raise an important point, which is that there are seen and unseen costs in the energy system. And so you look at like the levelized cost of electricity, and comparing dispatchable and non-dispatchable resources is not an apples to apples comparison, because you have to look at the value that those resources provide to peak demand. And you also have to look at the incremental cost of connecting non-dispatchable resources via transmission. That is not factored into the LCOE, which can appear low. But if you do a balancing of cost and value, you will see that reliable dispatchable generation is by far the most valuable generation that we have. And we know that because the nonpartisan grid operators tell us that. And so we are in the largest RTO ISO in the country at PJM. And this region, as with many others, is facing severe resource adequacy challenges due to the energy subtraction policies that we've seen over the years at both the state and federal level. Trump administration is fixing those problems. We're stabilizing the existing energy system by preventing premature closure of generation. We're optimizing it, so we're upgrading in new transmission in key congestion areas where you can actually reduce costs for consumers and get more out of the existing system. We're uprating generation, nuclear, natural gas, and coal, and then we're going to be building and growing our overall energy system to meet future energy demands.
As a lifelong resident of Oregon and having spent 12 years in the Oregon legislature, I've heard lots of discussion about, I'm going to say wishful thinking, about how if we just have all of this intermittent power, then the rest of our problems will take care of themselves. And I saw it most clearly recently in going back and looking at the year that we're supposed to be all renewable in Oregon, which would be 2040. And then moving back this direction, it's 90% in 2035 and something like 80% in 2030. That's just a few years away. Right now, we're using about 30% natural gas. And if you're going to use renewable, you've got to go to where it is, and that requires transmission. So why people think that suddenly transmission is going to spring into place so that they can bring that renewable power in is unclear to me. And I've raised this issue many times, but it always seems to be, well, don't worry about it. Somehow someone will step up and fix this. Yeah. But transmission, because of all of the environmental laws and protections we now have, takes forever to build. So tell me, how do we overcome this, the problem that I just called out, with avoiding the wishful thinking we've been hearing a lot of today?
It's a great question. I think we need more transmission, but we don't need unconstrained transmission build out. We need to be strategic about where it's being built. Otherwise, we're going to continue to put upward pressure on electricity prices. And electricity prices rose 20% under the previous administration and a lot more in some areas. We have to be very strategic. There are real system congestion costs in certain regions of this country that have sufficient generation, but just don't have enough capacity on the wires to move the electrons from where they're generated to where they're needed. Those are imposing, that system congestion is imposing billions of dollars of costs on American families. And so we can strategically upgrade, and we are starting to do that now. We have used our loan program to do that. We're looking at grant making to do that. Not in unconstrained transmission build out, but in strategic reconductoring, grid enhancing technologies in areas of highest system congestion costs where you can increase incremental load serving capability, because That's what the system operators need to keep the system.
I want to thank you for your time and for your work. Yield back.